Let's look at an example of our disk method here. So for the region bounded by y equals x squared, y equals 0, x equals 2, there's my y equals 2x squared, there's y equals 0, and x equals 2. It's a vertical line. So x being 2, 2 squared is 4 times 2. That will be a y coordinate of 8. All right, so we're going to revolve it around the x-axis. There's my little circle saying where I'm revolving it. Now build your reference rectangle. This height of my rectangle will be your r of y. Flip the blue curve over the x-axis. Draw your circle. There's my volume of my three-dimensional shape. So r of x is equal to 2x squared. We go to our formula. We can substitute everything in. 2x squared is going to be 4x to the fourth. I like to factor out the 4 because when it comes to evaluating, it'll be just much easier to have less coefficients multiplied in there. So this will be x to the fifth over 5, or 1/5 x to the fifth. Factor the 1/5 out to the front to get 4/5 pi. And now we evaluate from 2 to 0, which will be 2 to the fifth, which is 32 minus 0. So there's no cancellation. 5 won't divide into 32. So 4 times 32 is 128 over 5 pi units cubed. If they want a decimal representation and tell you to use 3.14 pi, please do so. Don't use your calculator version. It'll be too big. Okay, next example. Same curve. X equals 0 and y equals 8. And now we want to revolve it around the y-axis. So that means I'm going to have a perpendicular horizontal reference rectangle. So now we're going to integrate with respect to y. So again, take your blue curve, flip it over the y-axis. Here's my three-dimensional object. So r of y has to be found. We have to take y equals 2x squared and solve it for x. So I divide over the 2, take the square root, I get plus or minus. Now because my original boundary shape was in quadrant 1, we're going to keep it as a positive. So there's my r of y. Okay, let's go to the formula. Pi times our integral c to d of ry squared. We'll put our square root in there. We're going from 0 up to 8. Squaring the square root will just give us y over 2. Again, factor out the denominator of 2, call it pi over 2. This becomes y squared over 2, or y squared times the half. Move that out front, call it pi over 4. 64 minus 0, and 64, and 4 can go into 64 16 times, so 16 pi units cubed. Now, let's move our axis of rotation to some other location. So again, same blue curve, y equals 0, okay, that's the x-axis, x equals 2, so that same shape we had before, but now we're going to revolve it around x equals 2, this red line right here. All right, that's still horizontal. So now my radius, or r of y, my reference rectangle, goes from the red line to the blue curve. So my r of y, I'm going to have to go right curve minus left curve to find r of y. So again, rotating around the red vertical line, think about, okay, take the blue, flip it over, draw in my circle, and here's my three-dimensional shape. So my right curve minus left curve. Right curve is just the 2. My left curve, okay, I'm going to go steal that from the previous problem. That was the square root of y over 2. Here's r of y. So again, we are going to integrate from 0 up to 8. Now 2 minus the square root of y over 2, all that squared, dy. Now we're forced to FOIL this out. So you're going to get 4 minus 4 square root of y over 2 plus square root times itself will be y over 2. Hey, come back here. So the square root, I'm going to change that to a fractional power, y to the 1/2. Then this 2 on the inside of the square root, I'm going to factor that out, if you will, put it underneath the 4 as 4 over the square root of 2. And now we'll integrate each one. So we'll get 4y, we'll get y to the 3/2, and this fraction gets multiplied by 2/3, and this will be y squared over 2, or which makes that 1/4. Alright, so here really can't do any canceling, so we'll substitute in and see how we can simplify as we go along. 8 times 4, alright, that'll be my pi times bracket 32. If I put in 8 here, alright, what's going to happen there, on a little side note this, 8 is 2 to the 3rd being substituted in for that y. So power to a power makes that 2 to the 9/2. Power to a power rule says, hey, we can, product rule says we can write this as 2 to the 4th times 2 to the 1/2, because then I add my powers and I get 9/2 or 4.5. Well, 2 to the 4th, we can simplify that and multiply it to the 8. But the nice thing about this 2 to the 1/2 is the square root of 2. And that's going to cancel with this square root of 2. And so my 8 times 2 to the 4th, which is 16, is going to become, let's see, 128 over 3. And then finally, 8 squared is 64 times a 4th. That's this plus 16. So 32 plus 16, that's going to be 48. As I said, minus my 128 over 3, that's this middle term. Alright, subtract these two. Well, 48 times 3 minus 128 in the calculator is 16, so that's 16 pi over 3 units cubed. And that's our disk method.